Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Student Voices Voting for the Arts stream. Today we are with Anne Marie. So, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Anne Marie Miller. I'm Director of Advocacy and Public Policy for Art Pride New Jersey. I know that sounds like a big mysterious title, but it's really about promoting the arts and making sure that they're in all sorts of public policy.
So that's cool. That's cool that you know all that, all the policies and everything. I have no idea to a certain extent, of course. So, can you kind of tell us a little bit about why voting for the arts is important and just some details about how you would go about voting for the arts specifically versus voting for anything else?
Sure. So why is it important? Okay. It's important because, some funding comes from government, and it comes from the government on a federal level, comes from government on a state level, and also on a local level. And that funding really helps keep the price of attending arts events low. And when funding is accepted, whether it's from the National Endowment for the Arts on a federal level or from the State Arts Council on a state level or from like your local arts council on a local level, um, if you accept public funds, you also have an obligation to make your programs available to the public. So that keeps access open to everybody, not just people who can afford a ticket or a higher price ticket.
So then, why do this is just a curiosity then. So why is it that certain things are more expensive than such as like Broadway versus other ones versus like the local ones, and what is it, how do we get things free? Like, how is it that certain shows are free for us to see?
Right. So that's kind of the explanation for why some things are free. So if you're getting money from government, you have a obligation to make things available to the public for free. Now, that's different from for-profit enterprises like Broadway. So Broadway is trying to make money, and nonprofit organizations that usually receive funding from government are not, they're nonprofit. So they're trying to stay alive and continue their programming where on Broadway, they're trying to make a profit. And so the what happens on Broadway is that the expenses are much higher to produce the kind of productions that you see in New York on Broadway. I mean, they go all out, and they have massive audiences over really really long period of time. Where nonprofit organizations like theaters, have short runs for a limited audience, and they budget very carefully to make sure that they can cover the costs of their production. Everything from stage management and technical aspects to the artists on the stage and the concessions and the box office and everything else. So, all of those factors go into the price of what it costs. So, yeah, there is a difference.
So what do you think we need right now the most in arts that can happen through voting?
Well, we need more money to the federal agencies. So the National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for the Humanities, the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences, they're all funded through federal government. That money comes down to the state and then it comes down to a local level. It's, right now for the National Endowment for the Arts, it's $176 million, but that's for the entire country. So what New Jersey gets from the National Endowment for the Arts is about close to $900,000. And that money then trickles down to nonprofit organizations. So for theaters, it goes to everybody from McCarter and Paper Mill to Two River Theater and Passage Theater, and then it goes down even further to very small community theaters through their county arts agencies. So, we're looking for that kind of funding, but we're also looking at, payroll protection program, and so that and extended unemployment benefits, healthcare benefits, because they all affect artists who are working, whether they're working as a theater administration or whether they're working, on productions. They're working on virtual productions now. It still requires, the technical needs that theaters are using to try to get stay connected with their audiences.
So, would you say that was greatly affected by the pandemic? And what are some other things which we would need to vote with? We would need to think about when voting, which were affected by the pandemic.
Okay, so yeah, it has. I mean, we did a survey recently and found that due to cancellations and postponements and layoffs and furloughs, that over $100 million has been lost by arts and culture in New Jersey from March projected through December, and I think that's probably an underestimate of the amount that's been lost. When groups were asked how much would it take to keep them alive, the survey was the end of September through December 30th. They estimated they needed $8 million just to stay alive. And when we asked them if they, expected to be here next year, there were over 25%, it was over 26% of them said they really weren't sure. So everybody's like sort of dealing with life on a week to week basis, month to month basis to see if they can stay alive. And a lot of them are depending upon funding from the federal government. So when you're making decisions about voting, what you can do, there are several things you can do. And this also goes to school board elections too. So that's the idea of making sure that arts education is really important in your, everyday school, right? And that arts aren't being pushed on the side. So you can go to several places to check and see, what your elected officials, how they feel about the arts. Are they involved with the arts? Do they donate money to arts organizations? How do they feel about funding for the federal institutions? How have they voted in the past in when they're presented with an appropriations bill that includes funding for arts? Have they voted in favor of it? Have they not voted in favor of it? Have they signed on to letters that encourage their colleagues to support the arts? You can go to the Americans for the Arts or Art Pride New Jersey. We have posted a congressional arts report card that has, several, I think there are 10 different questions that, members of Congress have responded in one way or another. Are they on the Arts Caucus? Did they vote in favor? You can find out all of that information. We do that when state legislators are running. So that's not happening this year for Assembly or Senate, but it will happen next year. And we send them a questionnaire and ask them the same kinds of questions. And then for school board, you can go to artsednj.org, and the school board candidates, there are hundreds of them listed, and you can find out how they feel about arts education. So, it's really just about being an informed voter, and understanding that all of these things really do have impact, on everything from, rent to mortgage to education, at all levels, to your health care benefits, to, unemployment benefits. Government plays a big role, and the fact that we're waiting now to hear about the next stimulus package has everybody very anxious. So not only are they anxious about the election, but they're also anxious to find out what's going to happen because they're worried about, will I continue to have unemployment? Will my organization still be able to get loans to keep them going for a period of time until this is all over? And people feel safe going into theaters and to different participating in different types of arts activities with a lot of people.
So that's very interesting, and I want to discuss from different perspective of voter, if that's okay with you. So from the perspective of, for example, a parent, what would I want to be looking for when I'm voting if my kid is in the arts?
Well, if your kid's in the arts, you want to know, I think you want to know on a local level, are there opportunities in your community? So, is there a local arts commission? Also, how does your school board feel about supporting the arts? So those things are really important. And, on a statewide level, you want to make sure that there's funding out there for nonprofit groups, because they're the ones that come into the schools or into the virtual classrooms to provide extra instruction. Many students are receiving, virtual instruction now, and everything from music and dance and theater. So, and the schools are not always fully equipped to do that. So, you want to make sure that, there's a healthy arts community in your town that can support students.
That sounds good, and sounds exactly like what we should be looking for when voting. So then also thinking from a younger artist perspective, like a 25-year-old artist who's just breaking into the field, whether it be visual or theatrical or whatever it ends up being for them, what would be something that we should look for when we're voting like that?
Well, it's kind of the same thing. You want to know how your Congress people represent you. You want to know that they're supportive of the arts as much as they can be. And I think, on a statewide level, you also want to know who your state elected officials are and if they've supported bills that have helped the arts. Have they voted in support of funding? Have they voted in any kind of legislation that might have to do with providing job opportunities for them? Workforce development opportunities, apprenticeship opportunities, vocational education, all the different, aspects that you might be part of your everyday life.
So what is something we should be wary of? Something or a group or something that we should look out for to make sure that our arts are still protected and our rights are still protected as for the arts?
So, we're really lucky in New Jersey to have a very, progressive legislature on a state level and also in Congress. So, yeah, I mean, currently we only have 2 Republican members of the House of Representatives, and each of them have been supportive of the arts. So it's important to not think along party lines, but to really know more about the person and whether they've been supportive of the arts or not. I think people are sometimes too hasty to say, oh, well, Republicans don't support the arts. That's not true. Not all, I mean, in some cases it's true, but not across the board. Similarly, not all the Democratic legislators have been as supportive as they can be. So it's important to know who's representing you, whether you're voting or whether you're getting ready to vote, so that you know who these people are and how they feel, and what their background is, and do they have a lot of times you'll find out that either they have studied in the arts in some way, shape, or form, or have a child that's either young or grown that has also been really involved in the arts, those are things that make a difference.
So this is more of a general voting question, and then I'll get to a more specific arts voting question. So what are some of the big ticket voting in our local election, not necessarily our presidential, because we all are well aware of what's going on with that, but in our local election, what are some big ticket people who we're going, like big ticket offices that we're going to be voting for this year? And then how is that going to, which ones are most affecting on the arts?
Well, so again, we go back to there's a lot of things going on. There's the funding for the federal agencies, but there's also been a lot of interest and support for performing arts centers, so and for live performance venues. So that's everything from a nonprofit to a for-profit, and that includes local bars and local restaurants that have entertainment, all the way up to the huge performing arts venues and the arenas that where you go to see a big concert. And all of those people are out of work too. So everyone from the performers who are not doing tours now, right? They're doing a lot of virtual work, right? And all the technical people behind them. So there's been a lot of interest in a piece of legislation called Save Our Stages, that will help all those performing arts venues stay alive, because they're really worried that by the end of December, when many of them have either accessed the payroll protection program or not been able to access that they're just not going to survive. And we're going to lose a lot of places where young artists can perform, and where there are opportunities for people to perform.
So can you give us a little bit more context on what Save Our Stages would do, and what Save Our Stages is, why it's out there, why we're working towards it?
Well, we're working towards it because for that very reason. It's like survival right now. And so it's interesting because it's a piece of legislation that has gotten a lot of interest, and it's gotten support from both Republicans and Democrats. And so to some on the Democratic bill that has not yet been voted on by the Senate, there is a certain amount of money in there for Save Our Stages. So it's found its way into the big stimulus package that they're trying to move forward. That's because people are worried. It's because they've made a lot of noise and contacted their legislators and told them that this is really important, not only to their emotional health, and their ability to access entertainment, but also for job opportunities.
So I remember when I was doing stuff for Arts Ed Week, I found that there was a lot of people who were put out of work when the arts started to close down because of the pandemic. So I don't remember what the number is. Do you remember?
The number has changed around. We're not really sure. We're we say that there are like about 22,000 people employed by the nonprofit arts, but it grows much larger when you add the for-profit, up to 80,000 people. But if we're looking at people who have lost their jobs or furloughed, we're looking at anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 people right now. But we're not, again, we're not really sure, because a lot of them have been hanging on due to unemployment and due to the payroll protection program, that PPP that was part of the first stimulus package. When that no longer protects them, I think that number is going to grow much bigger.
Absolutely. So what do you hope for with this election? Not based on the person, but based on what could happen with who like whoever comes in, but like what could happen, you know? Like what is the best case scenario necessarily?
Well, the best case scenario is that that there's a clear indication of what's going to happen, who's going to be president. That's number one. And number two, that there's renewed interest and hope in getting the stimulus package moving forward, so that both sides can come to the table and say, listen, the election's over. We really need to look out for the American people. We need to help them as this pandemic effects continue, because it doesn't look like it's going to get too much easier in the short term until there's vaccination and people feel confident in taking a vaccination and also that it works.
So as we start to close down this very interesting stream, make sure that you are commenting. The audience, please comment so we can have some questions from other people besides me and the people that I have reached out to on my social media. So lastly, in a way, what are some calls to action you'd like to do? What are some words of wisdom you'd like to say? Those are two separate questions, but I think you can maybe answer them in one.
Wow. Okay. Words of wisdom is just stay educated, know what's going on, use trusted news sources, don't listen to rumors and bad information, number one. Number two, I don't know. Those are the words of wisdom. I don't remember the first part. What was the first part of the question?
The first part is the calls of action. So what do you
calls to action?
What do you want your voters to do?
Well, again, stay educated. Check the resources. Become familiar with Americans for the Arts at artsusa.org. Become familiar with ArtPride, which is artpridenj.org. Become familiar with Arts Ed New Jersey, which is artsednj.org. And go to them often to see what's happening. Sign up wherever there's an opportunity to continue to get information, so that they can keep you informed, because things change, and in this day and age they change rapidly. So it's important for you to stay up to date on information. And then they also, each organization offers you an opportunity to be involved and engaged. So take advantage of those, so that you feel that you're making a difference by being involved.
Absolutely. So with that, as a truck goes by, I would like to request that everybody who is interested on checking out your representatives from, we have a question from Arts at NJ. How can students advocate for the arts during the year, not just during election time?
So, well, it's the answer to the last question. It's really stay involved with the different organizations that are there. That's their job. Their job is to stay informed, to be able to provide you with good, solid information that you can trust, and to offer you opportunities to either support different types of bills that are helpful to the arts, or in many cases there are job opportunities there. So when they pop up, they have job banks. All of those. Stay on top of them. Make it part of your list of resources that you check regularly.
Absolutely. So now, closing out, be sure to visit Arts at NJ, like we said. Visit artpride.org. Visit both of these places, and then on Arts at NJ, go to /survey 2020, and then you'll be able to take a survey discussing the representatives who we have who we have coming in. So you'll be able to check out everyone in both of those at both of those links to really understand who will be representing you, who will be going into the offices, which will decide your future to a certain extent. So thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for being on. I look forward to working with you in the future, and really let's hope for the best with all the voting.
Right. Thanks, Jocelyn. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you, everyone in the audience, and if you haven't already, go out and vote.